Hi, this is Marge Beeler with RareAgent, and we're continuing our mentor series. And today we have Adam Shapiro with Sales Reform School. Welcome, Adam.
Glad to be here.
Great. Well, I'd like you to take 5 minutes and just kind of go over how you got where you are today.
Sure. In 2014, I was a sales VP for a software company here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was parting ways with the company at the time and was thinking about what I wanted to do next. And I had already implemented sales process with two sales teams and one marketing team. And the consultant that I was working with said, we don't have anybody in the Atlanta area that knows sales process and knows messaging and training as well as you do. You should join us. I started thinking about that, and it sounded like a neat idea, capturing a lot of what I am all about as a person. And I decided to hang a shingle and be a sales consultant. What's evolved over the years is my company, Sales Reform School, helps technology companies and B2B sales companies professionalize their sales team. And what I mean by that is marry up the sales process they say or should be following, the messaging that their salespeople need to pull off within each step of that process, both in preparation, during, and then as a recap to each step of that process, and then the skills and behaviors to pull it all off that gels with the culture and the values of the client company. I then take that into an initial sales playbook, if you will, and roll that into a 2-day customized workshop where we cement the behaviors and messaging and process that goes into being a top flight professional sales force. And then I wrap that up in a third phase where I'm coaching the coach or helping with pipeline or opportunity reviews. It's been a blast. My customers seem to enjoy it.
And that's how we met, through a client of mine, and they had me go through it with you, and then I brought you into RareAgent to train our agents. So a little plug there for you. So I'm going to ask you right now, if you were to go into an organization, let's say a software company, B2B, and there may be 50 to 150 million, somewhere in that revenue, what top 3 things would you bring to the table as a mentor if the executive, maybe it's the VP of sales, needs some help?
It's interesting you position it that way, as that sort of company. I think you said 50 to $100 million. What I have found in the, let's say, under $100 million market, especially with software companies, is they have a good grasp of their strategy. So there's high-level folks who know where they want to go. They've got managers who are managing the people doing the jobs, and for my selfish purposes, sales, that is. So they have salespeople and they have managers managing salespeople. What they don't have is that third level in between the strategic executives and the management level, where they're putting together their processes, rolling them out, making sure they stick, and then reinforcing them afterwards. So that the first thing I would say to an executive at that size of company is, okay, you've hired the right people, you've got managers in place, you've got executives working on strategy. What are you doing to make sure those managers don't have to be on every call? What are you doing to onboard and, let's say, inboard your entire sales, marketing, and delivery force to be on the same page, talking and walking the same way? Oftentimes, they'll look at me and go, what do you mean? And that's where I know that, well, what we need to do is actually document why it is their customers buy from them and how we can do that again, how we can replicate their best sales experiences.
Okay, and looking at your career over the years, if you can mention 1 or 2, either individuals or just times where you were mentored, and how did they encourage you, and how did they hold you accountable?
Well, very, very early in my sales career, I can't even remember his name. We were at selling to a tire company up in Ohio somewhere, and we had about an hour and a half meeting with executives. We took a break, and then we were going back for another hour or so. And during break, this gentleman who was an excellent salesperson, really, I wish I could remember his name, looks at me and says, Adam, the good Lord gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you need to use them in that proportion. Marge, I make a lot of mistakes. I rarely make them twice. I learned from there that, yeah, listening is more important than talking. I needed to check my ego and listen to make sure that I was getting things right. That's first of all. I don't know if you know this, but in my earlier career, I was an attorney. I actually practiced law. And I moved from being an attorney to working for an online service for lawyers. And then I made my way into a company called Harbinger here in Atlanta. And I have to give credit to my first manager there, Bill Metello. Bill is now Senior VP at Seaburger. And Bill really mentored me well, both on, first of all, the hard work that it takes to be a successful salesperson, as well as the ability to problem solve. So that's someone who I would give credit for my career moving forward.
I'm laughing with, I had Robin Wadsworth who said to me, Marge, shut up. That's what her. She said, when the client's speaking, stop trying to take notes, just shut up and listen. And I have a memory auditory issue, so that was hard for me, but I learned to use the recorder and ask, do you mind if I record the meetings? And most people understood, so that was worked great. I want to ask you a little bit, how important do you think it is for assessment tests of the sales force, both on the personal side, their personality, and also on their skill level side?
Well, Marge, I've written about what it takes to be a successful salesperson, and I do think that successful salespeople come from all walks of life, all personality profiles. I do think that depending on what you're selling, your intelligence level needs to meet that. And setting aside the intelligence part of assessments, I find that assessments are critical in self-discovery. And I mean that for both the salesperson and the sales leader or sales coach who's going to be working with that salesperson. So if you have a person who is more detail-oriented but doesn't see the big picture as much, it's good to actually have an assessment that shows that that's where they are from a natural state, so that when they are encountering an executive or a CEO type who needs to understand the big picture first, they take it start with that, as opposed to then start with the details of whatever it is they're selling. I also think that there are personality assessments, which again are important. Not saying that there's one personality that works versus one that doesn't in sales, because I've seen all kinds succeed. It's just a matter of knowing who you are and what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what your type is, so that you know whether you need to emphasize or de-emphasize a certain part of that personality.
How about training? And I know you believe in it because you have a training company. But I find that a lot of organizations, they'll put their training on the front end, getting them hired, and then they don't always consistently hire or train. One of the things that I believe in is if your company is not going to do it, you still have to invest in yourself. So two things. One, how important is that? And two, how can they invest in themselves with other organizations, and how would they go about to find those organizations?
Okay, so if your question is how can an individual invest in him or herself in order to make sure they're constantly improving, my company is Sales Reform School, so it means you're constantly improving. The first step is you have to become a reader. You have to become a voracious have a voracious appetite for learning. And I think there's two areas that I want to stress. I remember, I believe this was during actually my legal career, since I was a history major and a philosophy minor. I didn't know much about business. And while I was representing large businesses, I had a senior lawyer say, you know what, Adam, you might want to start reading the Wall Street Journal. So every day I read the Wall Street Journal, I learn something about business. Whether I agree or disagree with some of the points of view or the opinion page doesn't really matter. The important point is that I'm being exposed. I'm exposing myself to areas of the world and areas of the business that I may encounter in my daily sales professional life. So that's one area. The other area I think you need to invest in yourself, when I'm saying reading, is that whole idea of self-improvement. I was a little late to it, but I read The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People by Stephen Covey in the late 90s, which was a little later after it came out, and it was life-changing for me. So having those guideposts that you can learn about, and if you're not one to read those sort of books on yourselves, then of course you should be going to the classes, taking webinars, taking seminars, where you can be exposed to these ideas on self-improvement or areas of business that you're not familiar with.
Well, that pretty much is the interview. It's just quick 10, 15 minutes. That's what I've been doing. I want to say thank you. And if you will stay on, I'm going to stop the recording, but if you will stay on for a second afterwards, and I'll talk to you about how you can get a copy of it too.
Glad to.
Again, thanks for doing this. Hold on.
Thank you.